I actually broke into the vice president of EA's office after hours by stealing someone's key card, and I left some written documents on his desk, and then he got back to me within a few days. Pretty pissed off at me at first, but then he liked my writing, asked flat out, "What do you want?" And I just blurted out, I want to be a writer.
Hi, welcome to the Remotely Creative Podcast. I'm your host, Scotty Carlson. Today on the show, we have my good friend, Sean Smiley. Sean has worked in the video game industry for over 2 decades, wearing a lot of different hats, everything from a game tester all the way up to producer, and pretty much everything in between. Sean talks about how his experience as a snowboard instructor actually led to his first opportunity in video games, as well as a couple bold moves he took early on to level up. Risky. And stick around to the very end because Sean gives some great advice for anybody who's looking to break into the creative industry. Now, on with the show. You're Sean Smiley. Sweetest name maybe going. Again, also from a comic book. You live in Roslyn, BC currently, which is in the interior of British Columbia, and we're about 20 minutes away from the U.S. border. You work in video games, a bunch of different roles over time.
Yeah.
And so if you want to just kind of give us a short introduction on maybe how you ended up in video games, and then we can lead into how you ended up back in Roslyn.
Yep. So I currently work in video games. My position right now is director of production at Kabam Studios in Vancouver. It's a mobile game studio famous for Marvel Contest Champions. I got into video games. I'm actually going on my 24th year, and I got into games as basically a writer. Nothing more, nothing less, just writing dialogue, and then got into writing cinematic scripts. The reason I got into video games, my hook was I was living in Whistler, working full-time as a snowboard instructor and snowboard marketing and competing in some pretty terrible snowboard events. And I heard that Electronic Arts was making a snowboard game, and through a couple of friends, I managed to kind of get in there and say, I know snowboarding. And one thing led to another and a few favors and the whole bit. And I got in there writing snowboard terminology, and then that was a springboard. And then I've worked my way through the game industry from everything from lead writer to game designer to producer to executive producer to creative director to director of production, which I don't really know what that is yet. I just got the promotion a little while ago. And then when it comes to Roslyn, I lived in Vancouver for most of my career, 15 years or so. And then I would bounce around, a lot of travel to the States and Europe, working with studios and stuff. And then after a couple of mishaps, one being a big motorcycle crash, I decided I need a better, healthier environment. And I came back to Roslyn, and when I say come back, it's because I actually grew up here, and I've always wanted to come back to this place. I came back to Roslyn about 6 years ago, kind of on and off for a couple of years, bouncing back between Roslyn and Vancouver and some other places. But now I live here full time, and I work remotely.
You know, I know when you started at EA, you started at kind of a lower entry level position. And I think, you know, myself included, it's hard to kind of swallow that, reality pill and do something, even though you want to be up here, you know, making things and designing things and writing things.
Yeah. Actually, starting at EA, I didn't actually start as a writer. I started as QA. Quality assurance game tester. That's how I got my foot in the door through a friend. He's like, well, they don't know you. So if you want a quick job, and I'd left Whistler, I was living in the city, and I got in as a QA game tester for a few months. And that's not a fun job, even if you're a gamer. But what it did do was allow me access to the studio and figure out who's in charge and who the important people were. It was like I took military skills of recon and figuring out what, you know, who is the key target and stuff like that. And I actually broke into the vice president of EA's office after hours by stealing someone's key card, and I left some written documents on his desk. And then he got back to me within a few days, pretty pissed off at me at first, but then he liked my writing, asked flat out, "What do you want?" And I just blurted out, I want to be a writer. And he's like, "We don't have writers in the house." Long stretch silence. He goes, "But okay." And that was it. I got my first job writing. And that was actually my first professional paid gig writing. Didn't pay a lot. Nobody liked me. I sat in the corner by myself. No one knew what to do with me. And I just wrote. And I walked around introducing myself to people, finding stuff to write on the game. And that actually helped me huge because I would write character bios, then dialogue. Then I knew they were doing little cinematic moments in the game. And I was like, "Oh, I know how to write scripts." I didn't. So I said I did. Then I actually lied and told them I knew how to do voice directing, so I could voice direct the dialogue. I didn't know how to do that. I had to look it up at that point online, find out how to do it, and just scam my way through. A lot of early part of my career was just telling them I could do it, then going home and trying to figure out how to do it over a weekend. Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
I feel like so many of the projects I've done in my life are people coming and going, "Hey, we need this. Can you do it?" And it's like, "Of course." Hang up the phone and,
Google,
Yeah.
YouTube, not sure, crib notes on my hand. The first time I ever did voice directing, I talked to the actor in the recording booth for like 5 minutes. And then the sound engineer was looking at me with a side eye and he goes, "Hit the talk button." And I had to do it all over again. I had no idea what I was doing in there.
For sure. Yeah. I think that's the exciting part with any project, is the kind of the stuff you don't know. Sometimes, just being a tool and doing something that you know how to do easily is great. And, it pays the bills and you can kind of just do it with your eyes closed to some degree. But then, those other ones that come along where you're like, "Oh man, I think I know I can figure it out. And I think I have the resources at least or people in my life to ask." And
Yeah, and I never looked at it as I was scamming someone. It was like my whole intent was to deliver and perform and do the best I could. That was just my way of getting in there. And I always made sure to give it as much like energy as I could to make sure the product, and it worked. Obviously, I kept going through games, and then I ended up being like the go-to guy for voice directing on a lot of projects because I just spent time with actors, learning how they did it. I even took audition classes and acting classes to figure out what the actors were going through so that when I could voice direct them in audition, I had an idea of where they were coming from and then never wanted to act.
Totally. Well, I think I think you would be a good actor, at least a stunt man.
Yeah, that I could see.
But I think that there's asking for what you want is an undervalued skill. I think oftentimes we show people things we can do and expect them to then ask us to do them.
Right.
Sometimes that works out, but more often than not, it's putting yourself out there, taking that risk, and then asking, someone says, "What do you want?" Having, the bravery really to say, "I want to be a writer."
Yeah.
Even though it didn't exist in the field, you didn't have someone that you were looking to going, "I want to do what they do." You said, "I just want to do this." And I know you're a good writer because I've read a lot of your writing, but also that early on, one of your friends who is now a producer, I just saw on his LinkedIn today at a very prestigious company.
I saw that too. I was very excited for him.
I won't put names, but I sent him an email once and he wrote back. He said, "There's 2 emails I always look forward to receiving when they're in my inbox. It's yours and Sean Smiley." Something about the way you guys just write emails. And then beyond that, but it's just this exciting thing. And I think if you can condense, if you have enough style that even in your emails, it's your fingerprints on it.
Well, it's a really interesting point because I would find, I really learned process wise was to pitch ideas. People don't want to read. It doesn't matter if there's $50 million riding on the project. Nobody wants to read. So I would condense everything down to 1 page. And half the time it was half a page to get across a $50 million idea. And then I learned, if you put a little style and tone into it, they read it and kind of that helps get into the mood. So I would spend a lot of time just reading it out loud, trying to find that right tone. And sometimes you just, like if you're writing a skateboard project, you've got to be in that. You got to do the research, figure out the pattern, military, fantasy, all that kind of stuff. That I really enjoy. And yeah, I always try and find that tone of voice in projects because that helps sell it. And you develop your kind of pattern. I'm not a flowery writer. I like it to be pretty rapid fire, pretty clean. Yeah, and that's something I've tried writing really flowery and, poetic and stuff. It doesn't feel right. It just falls flat. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think too, once you figure out what you like and how you like doing it, then you can kind of shut off the brain and the formatting, and it comes out of you versus when you're trying to, create something that's outside of your natural style.
But then that said, I love like military stuff, fantasy, science fiction, superheroes, my favorite things to write. But my one passion in life is horror. And I find it so hard to write a horror story.
Right.
I don't know. I've got concepts, but to actually write it out, it's almost like horror has been a part of my life for so long. It's hard to actually express horror. I don't know. I've always struggled with that.
Yeah, which is surprising because you're the only person I know, I guess Reese too, that goes to the theater on your own, watch horror movies to put yourself to sleep.
I watch horror movies during the day to relax. I'll put Friday the 13th, 1 to 10, Jason in Space being, the absolute terrible. But I will put them on in the background because it's comforting to hear axes and the that I love that. But that you're so close to it, and I have such a personal connection to it from being a kid watching VHS horror films that it's then there's like some sort of weird barrier to actually write. I've got some good ideas. I'd have to partner with someone to write them probably.
Yeah. I think, we all have these unique experiences and lived experiences and childhoods and all that stuff that packs together that, when it comes to writing or creating, that it's all valuable. And it's just, your experiences are suited to certain things, whereas someone else's. But, something I think about often is, we live in a small town, just Roslyn. I don't even know what the population is, 5,000 tops.
Yeah.
We got a really sweet ski hill.
Yeah.
It's 5 minutes away from, door to door. And it's got trails everywhere.
Yeah.
One thing it doesn't have is a big network of creative. There's lots of creative people, but there's a lot of creative opportunities or businesses or networks that exist. And so even if you're known in that town, it's not like, lots of opportunities come.
Yeah.
So something I think about often, is the can you hear me now idea, where we're in this place where it's remote. Yeah. We're, hours to get anywhere that has, more streetlights than one like flashing. Anything. Yeah. And so part of what I think you need to do is you need to take the advantages you have, which is here we have time, we have access, we have nature, we have all this stuff, all of these things that can fill our tank or inspire us.
Yeah.
And create something unique within that then is a signal that we can put out into the world. And that then is because if I'm just standing there on my own saying, can you hear me now? Nobody can hear me. I need to keep climbing up and find a point. And that point, that high point for me is always creating something that I can put out into the world that then generates that like, oh, you do that. Oh, that's cool. And all of a sudden I'm heard and I'm seen. And I think that it's hard sometimes to self-motivate when you're burnt out, when you're, feeling uninspired, or that your tank's empty, or that you've been knocking on doors and nobody's answering them.
Or the people around you have no idea what you're doing or why you're doing it.
Totally.
Like when people would say to you, is this really worth all that effort? Like when I was working, I left full-time positions in games and became a contractor, freelance. And there'd be times where I would talk to a client, or a possible client, 10 times, spend hours on the phone, maybe fly out to meet them, get material, do research, and then never hear from them again. And friends of mine in town would be like, is this worth your time and effort? But at the same time, the beauty of the small town in Roslyn, for me specifically, was this was the place that I grew up where nothing was going on in the summers. So it was adventure time. Me and my dog in the forests, running around, dressing up. I had a Captain America costume that I wore all the time with a shield and everything. Ran through the forest with my German Shepherd as a kid. It became a fantasy land to me, and I always associated this town with imagination. Like, it was so quiet, and we had 2 TV channels and nothing going on. No bookstores, no comic stores. You had to come up with your own ideas. I then looked back on this place as like the most inspirational, creative place I could think of because there was nothing else. And every time I come back here, it'd be a reset for me. And I would be working in games and stuff going, I got to get back to that town. Because there's something about the energy. And I find that was the energy that would get me through the downtimes. When I first moved back here, I was a contractor, freelance, and it bombed. I couldn't get enough gigs to make it worthwhile. I was actually teaching writing at UBC, and that was kind of a good gig, but not enough to sustain me. And even living here, it was challenging. I had to leave and then come back. Like, it took a few times to get into the rhythm. And even today, I live here. I have a full-time job. I've been in town for years. I have friends here. I feel like I'm a part of the community and stuff. But I don't know any other video game people within 4 hours of this town. Like, the only other video game person I know lives in Kelowna, which is 4 hours from here, and he actually works for me. No, and so other than you, I actually don't have a lot of people to talk to about creative challenges. So when you have those really creative days where you're just like, oh, I can't do anything right, and you're just feeling down, I have literally one person who can go, I get it. Maybe 2, Frankowski, but I don't know a lot of other working creatives in the area. A lot of creative people here, but not a lot of working creatives.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's, where we live is obviously a resort town and, heavily based on tourism, but we're very close to 2 mill towns.
Yeah.
And I grew up in a mill town not far from here called Castlegar.
Yeah.
And still love it to this day. But I have a lot of friends that from high school, lots of people moved away to university, but lots stayed and got jobs at the mills. And at first I was like, oh, what are you doing? That just seems like, you're not that you're giving up at that, there's more out there to go do. And then as they bought houses and,
oh boy,
got a snowmobile and, I started having families and I was still just like trying to hustle all the time. I was like, oh man, there's something really smart and I'm jealous of like, the contentment in having a job might not be your passion or a career, in the sense of like a creative career, but just they go in, they do a good job, they work hard, they get their time off. They're not constantly thinking about, what they have to do next at work. And now it's definitely, I've gotten to a point where I really like being surrounded by such a diverse mix of people that, where we live, there's lots of people that do work remotely in different industries, but then there's lots of people who work at the mills. There's lots of people that work at the hospital. There's lots of people that work in tourism. And there's like this mix that I feel like creates a different kind of energy.
I find it's good. It grounds you a bit because I'll go to things like Comic-Con and then talk to Hollywood directors, and it's like, oh my God, this is crazy and wild. And then you realize, this isn't like real life. And then you come back here and you're like, oh yeah, this is a little bit normal, a little bit more sustainable. And huge amount at times in my life, envy of those that have a regular job, a full-time job. They know what they're doing tomorrow and they know what they're doing 6 months from now. That's a safety and a calmness that I haven't had in a long time. Games pays pretty well, and you get the chance to get involved in some pretty exciting properties. I've worked with Marvel, Disney, that's pretty exciting for a guy like me that came from a small town. But my industry, it's no secret right now, is a mess. I think the number is 8,000 people in North America laid off at the beginning of 2024 in the first 2 months of 2024. That's insane for any industry. And that's the moment where I sometimes look at my friends who do work at the hospital or the school board or, the college or the steel mill, stuff like that. And there's a certain part of me that's going, oh, that'd be so nice. You can get a loan from a bank because the bank goes, oh, we know what you do for a living. But if you walk in a bank, go, well, once I worked with Marvel. They're like, you still working with Marvel? You're like, no. They're like, okay, no, we're not giving you
You're a teacher? Approved.
Yeah, approved. You're a video game writer? Denied. And but then it also pushed me to actually find that consistency in my job. And one big thing it taught me is a huge part of my game career was in the early days and the heady days of games was working 3-month crunch cycles. And a crunch is 6 days a week, 10 to 12 hours a day for 3 months. Now, it's not manual labor and nobody's shooting at you. So it's not like the end. And you get meals. But after a couple of months of that, it's hard on if you have a relationship, if you have any outside passions, it's exhausting and brutal. And, now over time, not really embracing our industry anymore. They try and balance it out. And I would look at friends who worked in other industries and pull from them. So with my teams, a big thing now is nobody needs to burn themselves out. It's not worth it. It's like regular, enjoy your job, enjoy the people you work with, take your lunch hour like everyone else does. Occasionally things get exciting in that, but not for long durations. It's just like get into a rhythm that's sustainable. And I've learned that from looking at my friends who are working more, non-creative or I don't know what you call it, regular jobs or that recognizable kind of jobs. So yeah. But then on the flip side, the rewards are pretty awesome. When you write something and someone likes it and then concept artists draw it and then millions of people get to play it, that's a pretty exciting, rewarding moment. And that becomes very addictive too. Yeah.
It is a great a feeling to create anything that, even if one other person views it and enjoys it, it's, and then multiply that, it feels pretty surreal. That I find the challenge I have is I personally enjoy the journey far more than the end result. Like, a lot of what I do is creating commercials, videos and stuff. And certain people I work with love going to festivals, where this stuff plays and watching it with an audience and, soaking up whether the applause or meeting people and just connecting with people on that side. And to me, it's like, oh my God, once I'm done, that whole interface with the audience is not my strong point.
I don't play my own games. I don't think I've played one of my games in 10 years. Yeah. Cause you're done. It's a little exciting to do press around it and stuff, but yeah. But then there was one time when we did an SSX game, and I don't know how this
said SSX, just so everybody knows.
SSX snowboarding, where I got to go to Comic-Con and promote the game and promote a comic I wrote for the game. And I showed up in San Diego Comic-Con with a booth, an SX booth, models who are dressed up as the characters, and 10,000 comic books to give away. And one particular person who I won't name basically told me, don't come back with any of those comics or else. Like, basically, we spent a lot of money on this. You got to give them away. So I had that kind of mandate. And we gave them all away. In fact, I signed most of them because I discovered fans of the franchise. And that changed my whole perspective on making games. I sat there and talked to guys who served on the USS Carl Vinson aircraft carrier who played the game, played our previous game in the cafeteria after hours, and how, like, months at sea they would play video games. I was like, oh yeah, that makes sense. And then I met dads who brought their daughters to Comic-Con and they dressed up as their favorite comic characters, and they come by video game booths and go, oh, we play this together. And then all of a sudden you realize all these people were really passionate about what you created. That changed a lot for me. And I do find that's lacking nowadays in games. The industry shifted where they're just not I don't think production teams get a chance to engage with fans. And it's really like, it brings a new energy into it. You start thinking about all the people that are going to enjoy this. Changes your writing a little, changes your creative, because you're like, right, yeah, I'm doing this for myself and ideas and doing it for the company and all thing. But then you forget that there's millions of people out there who really want to play this. How are you going to make it entertaining? Yeah,
it is cool. I think, you touched on something there, which is, people, we're all seeking community of some kind.
Yeah.
In this small town, we're seeking community, whether that's other creative people or, the people we ride bikes with, we just want to connect with. And oftentimes it's these weird things we think about or do, or whether it's horror films or certain video games, that when you do connect with people that share that and can speak that same language, there's this, something primal, I think, that inside of us that, gets woken up and feels alive. And it's that feeling of connection. I think that it lasts for a long time too. After those interactions, I think you can go for days, weeks, months, years, where that feeling is still kind of there, and the embers of that fire are still kind of, warm, and you're just seeking that again. And I think lots of times, especially in remote work, I work alone a lot.
Yeah.
I know you work alone a lot. You talk to a lot of people during the day, but depending on what your life is outside of that, you can start losing that community, losing those connections. And so
huge.
Yeah.
It's like, the benefits of working remotely in a small mountain town. Well, I'm a skier and a snowboarder and a mountain biker and a climber and a kayaker, so it's awesome. And I have a husky, so it's great. But I talk to a lot of people on Zoom. But at the end of the day, there's not a lot of people I talk to. And I'm a single guy in a small mountain town, and you're alone with your thoughts a lot. And you're not interacting with people in your industry after hours, which is good, but also, you kind of need to talk things out and discuss the day. I don't have that. That's one of the things I find working remotely is challenging.
There's working remotely, and then there's working remotely.
Yeah.
And there's lots of days. I have a family, so I go home and it's loud all the time. But beyond that, there's, lots of time that goes past where I'm just in my office, I'm working, focused on a project. I might be communicating through email, and now Zoom is a big thing, but weeks, months pass where I don't really have, major, communication with the outside world. And I think, doing those things, mountain biking, skiing, snowboarding, playing hockey, all those, great things we get to do here, take the sting out of that and add to that. But yeah, it's definitely something that I think is not overlooked, but it's definitely.
I'm always curious with people how they balance the pressures of work. Like, I feel really stupid saying to people, like, video games, there's so much pressure. Like, the stress is insane. The amount of people I know at my level, executive or director, who have actually had to take leaves because of health issues, and that it's brutal, and it's still happening. There's lots of people I know who have succumbed to it. And it's done a number on me a few times in my life. So I'm always talking to other people who work high stress careers and trying to figure out what they do to balance. And our town has an abnormal amount of doctors. And when I talk to them, a lot of them, they, after surgery, go mountain biking. After a big day in the ER, go spend time in the backcountry. And I've really embraced that, probably to the point of too much, where I leave Friday afternoons and come back Monday mornings, and I'll go off and camp with the dog, go do adventures, which is great. And it resets me and it keeps me balanced. But again, not interacting with people, not, I get my own inspiration out of nature, but not, probably interacting with people who have the same interests as me creatively. So yeah, I find myself every now and then I'll drive down to Spokane, 3 hours from here, just to see a movie and go to a bookshop. And that sounds crazy to people, but anyone who lives here, you do it. You turn me on to that bookshop, Auntie's, and I go there and just peruse the aisles like for hours, looking at book covers. Then I go see a movie, and if I'm lucky, grab a great meal, and then drive home. Yeah.
Yeah, I think for people that don't live, in remote locations, the amount of driving we do would be insane to them. The idea, that, we would drive 3 hours just to go see a movie or go through a sweet bookshop or drive 8 hours just to go to the city for the weekend or a couple of nights. And, we don't think about it that way. It's just part of the rural experience.
I go to Kelowna regularly, 3-4 hours from here for a weekend to catch up with a buddy who works in games, Reese. He's a fellow writer. We've worked together for years on multiple projects, and we'll meet up in Kelowna. He's in Vancouver, I'm in Roslyn. We meet halfway, go out for dinner, and we talk about work and process, and we go see movies. We talk books and audio and everything like that.
That's something I miss a lot here, and I haven't done enough, and I could do a better job of going to conferences, going to networking events, going to, those opportunities to learn, where someone's doing workshops. And when I travel, it's usually for fun or vacation or, for adventure. Yeah. Sometimes I'll try and, include some kind of event that's happening in one of those places, but not a lot of that here. And so not a lot of opportunity for that kind of network to grow. And when I see that stuff online, the pictures that get posted after and, people that went, it's like, oh, that looked like a great time. I really should have gone to that. But
then I also think it would make more sense for those conferences, events, and get-togethers to come here.
Yeah, right?
Why aren't you coming out to the mountains? Come on. But, and I'd like to talk a little bit about all the benefits of working in a small town, like working remotely. So I run a team, very high-end, super fast, agile, high-performing team. And there's me and one other guy out of 15, 20 guys that work remotely. And you've got to be disciplined. You got to be on time in meetings constantly, the whole thing. Like, you got to show up and do it. But the benefits I find is I'm at home, my own bathroom, my own kitchen. Anyone who's ever worked in an office, that is huge. I work in a creative field, and sometimes sitting at a desk, I'm not at my best creatively. I need to go for a walk. I can walk out my door with my dog, and there's a forest, mountains, quiet, put on podcast music, or just walk in silence. It's the most creative, tool for me. Living in a small town is not for everyone, but if you like it, it's awesome, because you drive around on a Sunday, you just see people, you wave even if you don't know them, because it's that kind of vibe. You know people at the local brew pub. You walk into a coffee shop, you can have a 20-minute conversation with the owner, John, because you've been coming there for years. Like, there's a certain comfort and stuff that I really is invaluable. And you learn how to make it work. The home office setup, making everything the way you want. I have the great chair, the great desk, surrounded by comic books and toys and art. I couldn't do that in a cubicle, so that, and then there's the health element. Take advantage of it. You get to work out, bike, run, do all that stuff. So I find the disadvantages are nowhere near the advantages. And I do criticize a lot of companies that are like, oh, everyone has to come back. I'm like, yeah, but if your employees are happy and if you're not suffering on any level, production revenue wise, why? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you're in a different circumstance than I am, because you're, employed.
Yep.
And I'm, self-unemployed.
Yeah.
But I agree. I think that, there's been opportunities where I could, move to work for someone. And I've always thought, I'd rather fight the good fight and, work for all the opportunities that might come my way from here versus going to somewhere where I'm not, as inspired. For anybody that's watching that might want to get into games, writing, but not specifically writing, or writing as a career in other aspects, is there any advice that you could give them?
Yeah, there's two pieces I usually tell people when asked. And the first one is, the idea, like the strategy of by any means necessary. So if you have friends, cousins, brothers, partner works in games and you want to work in games, hunt that person down and talk to them. Use every resource at your fingertips, every network, everything, and stay at it. By any means necessary, figure out how to get in there. Do your research of the industry. I'm amazed how many people want to be in games, and I ask them, oh, do you play on what console, mobile, blah, blah, and they just stare at you blankly. It's like, you got to do your research. And then when it comes to the actual craft, writing, let's say it's writing, you got to write. And I've mentioned this to other people. It's like when you're suddenly given the opportunity to actually write. When I was actually paid for the first time to write something, and the person I was writing for said millions of people are going to see this. Not millions, millions upon millions of people are going to see this. You don't want those first words you put on the page to be the first words you've ever written. So I've been writing pretty much my whole life in one way or another. And I read books and I listen to authors and I read interviews and podcasts and everything like that. So when I wrote, it felt second nature. You got to get to that point where you've been doing it. Like practice and doing it. Same for art, same for everything. And so those are the two things. It's one, by any means necessary, chase it down. And number two, hone your craft. Get ready. Always be learning, always be absorbing, and be ready to pull the trigger at a moment's notice.
Totally. Yeah, I think that's great advice. And it's something you mentioned earlier was that when that opportunity comes, that you have something to show, you have samples, you have something that you can put down, or you've done a spec piece for them. I think, as I mentioned, I think, again, I'll butcher the phrase, but luck is preparation meets opportunity. And I think it's super true. And I think that there's, again, in my life, there's been times where opportunities come. I've been face to face with the CEO or the marketing manager or someone that has influence in a place that I want that influence, and I'm not prepared. And then there's been the opposite of that, where I've met those people and I have been prepared and I've had something and I've been, in the right place at the right time with the right thing. And it's led to great opportunities, relationships. Sometimes those are side quests. They don't always, 1 + 1 doesn't always equal 2 in those situations, but more times than not, it's led somewhere. And I think, being prepared and wanting to do it too is, like you said, is a huge thing, because if you think you just want to do it, but you haven't been putting in the time, I want to be a writer, but you're not actually writing. I want to be, make films, but you're not writing films or trying to produce them.
100%. I hire people all the time, and I'll know right away if they're not an actual writer or an artist. I want to see their work. I want to see their enthusiasm. I want to see their passion. They got to answer the questions. They got to deliver. And it's sad when people don't. Yeah.
Welcome back to Roslyn.
Thanks, man.
It's been great having you here.
Yeah.
And we'll have to do 7 summits this year.
Yeah.
Even though we're both not going to be prepared.
No.
It's a 35-kilometer bike ride over 7 mountains. But yeah, we'll have you back. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Thanks, buddy.
Well, that was awesome. I want to thank Sean for stopping by, spending time with us, dropping some knowledge, possibly incriminating himself, and keeping the stoke high. If you like this talk, make sure you subscribe to the channel for more of these chats in the future. And I hope you're feeling at least remotely creative. Until next time, bye.